Hey everyone and welcome to the Retro channel, and today we're going to do some good old-fashioned hardware hacking, but not on any of these computers back here. We're going to do it with this thing, the Technics SL-PG100 CD player. Ever since I was a kid, I was curious about electronic items around the house, and I'd often open them up, and sometimes if we were lucky they'd still work when I put them back together. But I always noticed unpopulated spots on certain boards where, you'd have missing features from, say, a higher end model, and this one is no exception. I recently did a repair on this CD player, and while I was in there I noticed a couple of unpopulated spots on the board. The one that piqued my interest was the digital audio output. This particular model only has RCA outputs at the back. There is no digital audio out, but there are spots for it on the board, and the higher up models got digital audio output. So I went looking around for service manuals for these things, and I did find one for the PG100 model here, and also the 200, 300, 400, and I think there's even a 500. And it appears that 300E onwards does feature digital audio output, and looking at the service manuals, there's only a couple of components required to add that to this model, so let's give that a shot. And looking inside, we can see where the digital audio output would go, so it looks like it just needs a jumper link, a couple of capacitors, a resistor, and obviously the output jack. Now thankfully the service manual for the 300E does list the part number for the output jack, and I just managed to find one on AliExpress, so hopefully this thing works, and that's all we need to do. There are some other unpopulated spots. This one says accept PG100, and this looks like it goes to a headphone output, which normally sits around the front of the case here. I'm not too concerned about having headphone outputs from this thing. In fact, even just adding in a digital output isn't really necessary. I'm more than happy with the sound output from the built-in digital analog converter on this thing, but it's nice to have the extra option there, and really I just like hacking stuff. Right, here's our board, and yeah, all the capacitors on this thing look to be fine. They don't seem to be bulging, and the ones that I can see underneath don't appear to have any signs of leakage. So I'm pretty satisfied that these caps should be okay. I don't think there's any reason to go changing them out. So let's focus on adding these components and see how that goes. I was trying to clear these out and just realized they're just pads. They don't actually go through to the other side. It's just these ones that we need to suck out. Okay, let's just see if this thing actually fits correctly. So it should go like that, and it does. Nice. Before I go putting that in, let's install the rest of the components. We'll just make sure everything looks okay before we actually install the connector. So according to the service manual, we need a 6.3 volt 100 microfarad capacitor at C412, a 100 nanofarad at C411, and an 8.2K resistor at R411, and obviously that jumper link. Right, here's our required parts, and I'm sure I could use a bit of that resistor leg for that jumper link, so let's get these installed. And I'm guessing that one at R411 should be an 1/8 watt resistor like these little ones here, but all I have are 1/4 watts, that's fine. It can go in like that. Our electrolytic capacitor, it's got negative marked on that side. And our little ceramic jobby. And then we can just use one of these to make our jumper link. A quick burning of the fingers. Ow. Alright, I think that is it. 50 cents worth of components and we should be good to go. I don't see anything. Oh, there is a jumper link here. Only PG300E. What's a bet that that needs to go over to here as well? Goes from there. Yes, that goes to the other jumper. So we need to put a link in there, which I guess, yeah, it looks like it comes directly from this header over here, which would be where our digital audio is coming from. So another jumper link across there. Another quick burning of the fingers. Yep, that's hot. All right, now we should have something from somewhere on this connector all the way over to here. Yes, there it is. And it's labeled TX, which makes sense. Well, I don't really see anything else that needs to be done, and I doubt anything's going to go wrong, so let's just throw the connector in anyway. I was going to probe some of these on the scope, but I reckon it'll be fine. What's the worst that could happen?
Nick minute.
Legs really don't want to take solder. I have to add a bit of flux. No. Alright, so after a bit of fighting with this, I did eventually manage to get it to take solder. So I don't know why they wouldn't solder properly before, but after going over them a few times, they seem to have taken it now. I actually had to bend the pins over and even expose some of the copper under here because I pretty much lifted this pad off, but they do seem solid now, so hopefully this should work. I did consider giving up on this connector and using one of these, which is a 3.5mm audio output, but it does actually accept digital audio. So there's a little LED inside that you can use for digital audio output. Unfortunately, the pin spacing on these is totally different, obviously, and would have required a bit of work to actually solder onto this board. I guess the benefit of this is I only would have needed to drill a 3.5mm round hole in the back of the case rather than trying to cut out this square thing plus a screw hole. But we'll see how that goes in a minute. Let's give this a test first, see if it actually works. All right, let's give this thing some power, making sure not to touch any of the power supply board. It still appears to work, so that's always a good thing. And it's automatically playing, but we don't have any audio output hooked up, so let's just first check the analog output, make sure that still works, and then we'll try the digital. Okay, analog output works. We'll do a proper sound test later on. All right, I should be set to the optical input on the amp. It works. Cool. All right, time to do some case cutting, I guess. It's gonna go just around here somewhere. Right, our square hole's been cut, and I also made a little screw hole. Kind of funny that it lines up with this remote thing here. I think on this one, there's a little jack here that you connect to the Technics amplifier in this series, and then you can use the remote for that to control the CD player. But I'm pretty sure the higher end models don't have this remote jack. They actually have a dedicated remote for the CD player. So maybe we'll look at that too. But yeah, the hole's there. It's not perfect. Sorry I didn't film it, but I don't really want to take all the camera setup down to the garage and it'll just be me swearing at this thing and a bunch of filing noises and grinding noises. But I think I did an all right job. It's not 100% perfect, but as Dave would say, good enough for Australia. Oh, and you may notice there's a little bit of damage to this jack here, and that is because I found a screw that I thought would fit, and after screwing it in, it snapped off. So I had to cut the out. Anyway, found another screw. It should work, so let's get this all reinstalled. All right, there we are. I might have added a couple of extra scratches, but it's already scratched up anyway. Doesn't really matter. Let's do another quick check, just to make sure I didn't screw anything else up. Still works. I'll put a comparison at the end of this video with the digital versus analog audio output, but I really doubt you're going to hear a difference, especially with YouTube compression. And to be honest, I probably won't even hear a difference, even though I've got the thing right here. But before we do that, let's see if we can hack in a remote receiver as well. So to do that, we need to get this front panel off, which is held on by a couple of screws down the bottom. Is that all we needed to do? I think so, yes. It's nice and easy. Let's see, is it going to be as simple as just a few jumpers? A bunch of clips holding this on. IC602 accept PG100. Betcha that's the remote receiver, and there is a hole in the plastic molding at the front of the case, but it is not see-through, so well, that's not going to receive anything if we put something there. I guess it's covered up on this side. Just scratch at that, see if it feels plasticky. Oh, you can also see the spots for some more buttons here. That's also for the PG300. It's got like numbered buttons from 0 to 10, and it looks like a +10 button here as well. But once again, we don't have that luxury. And I guess those buttons would sit in this part of the case molding, which is all sealed off on this one. Well, there's IC 602 in the service manual for the PG300. Looks like there's a little cap there as well somewhere. Where does that go? Oh, that's that cap there. And it just lists IC 602 as a remote control receiver, RCD 0003. And no luck on Google or AliExpress, but what's a bet it's something like that, just mounted in a little can on this board. So I do have some of those little IR receivers. That could work. Here we go. It's probably hard to see, but on the back of the board, this says S, 5 volts and ground. So I guess that's signal, 5 volts and ground. I don't know how these are wired up though. What's the pin out on these things? Well, according to the one that they sell at JCar, pin 1 is our signal out, pin 2 would be our ground, and pin 3 is going to be our 5 volts. So a little bit backwards to this one, but we can make that work. Even if it's just for a test, I don't know if this will actually do anything, but let's give it a try. Oh, are there some more jumpers that we need to connect as well? There's a jumper under there, there's a few jumpers missing here, a couple there. There is one there that says accept PG100, so I reckon we need to connect that. So our 5 volts goes over here, that's where that capacitor is. So yeah, that's definitely going to be getting 5 volts, and ground, yeah, it's definitely going to be connected to ground. Let's see where the signal trace goes. There. So we need that jumper link there. All right, so our signal trace should make it over to here, which it does. Let's see where that goes. There. Aha, there. Which is where that other jumper link is. Alrighty. Alright, so now we should go from here all the way over to here, and then that goes to that pin on this connector, so I think that is it. So that should take our remote control signal over onto the board somewhere, and I'm assuming there's nothing else to do over here. It's going to be this pin here. Let's try it out. Alright, I've just quickly thrown that in there, nothing too pretty, but it doesn't need to be right now. Let's just plug this back in over here. Give this thing a bit of power and just see what happens. Make sure nothing explodes. The display still works, so that's always good. Let's see what voltage we're getting across this. Yeah. 5 volts. And it would appear that our signal pin is currently at 0 volts as well, so that's interesting. I just powered the machine off. Let's just see. Well, it's not a direct short. Yeah, 10K across there. So let me go grab a universal remote, because obviously I don't have the original remote for this thing, and we'll see if we can operate it with it. So I just borrowed the remote from the lounge room, so I better get this back pretty quickly, but I programmed in the Technics CD player codes for the PG300, so let's see if it recognizes any of them. Let's just try pause. Aha, it works. Skip. Hell yeah. Nice. I can go straight to track 10. I can go greater than track 10. Wonder if I just go 15. Yeah, sweet. Open, close. Well, that's probably a bad idea with that cable there. We won't do that. I want to hear something random. Well, that's cool. I think I might actually try and hunt down another one of these remotes. I do have one of the newer Harmonies, like the hub remotes, and it's just a pain in the ass, those things. I much prefer this one. And I am building up a collection of remotes in here, so that'd be kind of handy to have in here. But yeah, that's pretty sweet. All I need to do now is mount this thing properly and make a hole in the front of the case so that it can actually pick up the remote commands. I was going to try and figure out which button is stop, but I've got a remote. How am I going to clear out that hole? Maybe I will. Oh no. So I scratched at it before with some tweezers from the backside, and I can see a tiny ring around the front display, so looks like it is just painted on perhaps. I'll do. There's our little remote control window. Now I've just got to mount this receiver properly and make sure I don't short out the legs on it. Yeah, right around there looks about right, and it also makes it a little less obvious that there's a clear hole at the front of the case. Just make sure I didn't crush any of those legs and make them touch together. That seems fine. Yeah, that's all good. All right, let's just double check that our remote still works. Oh yes. What happens if you try and power it off? Can you power it off? Power toggle. Power toggle does nothing. Fair enough. Well, I think that's it for the mods on this CD player, so let's throw the top cover back on. I'm pretty happy with that result. Right, there we go, our upgraded Technics SL-PG100. We've now got remote functionality and digital audio outputs. Like I said, I'll put a little comparison between the analog audio out and the digital audio at the end of this video, so stick around if you want to hear that. For the USB audio capture, I've got this thing, which is just a USB capture device. It just takes digital audio in, so it doesn't do any analog conversion. And for the analog side of things, I've got the Behringer UCA 222. So this obviously takes analog audio in, converts that to digital, and sends it over a USB cable. So stick around if you want to hear the analog and digital comparison, but I really doubt you're going to hear it with YouTube compression and all that. And I'm also using tunes from the YouTube audio library, which are 320 kilobits per second constant bitrate MP3s. So they're high quality, but they're obviously not CD quality, not quite. So whether or not you're going to hear any difference, I don't know. Whether or not I'll be able to hear the difference even without compression involved is also another question. So I guess I'll find out soon enough. But as it is for now, thank you all for watching, and a huge thanks to the people that support the channel on Patreon. If you want to do the same, links to that are down in the video description. And yeah, let me know, did you think this was a good idea? Have you done similar hacks to various pieces of electronic equipment around the house in the past? Leave it all in the comments. Thanks for watching. Bye.